infernal fire, roaring hell engines for races and chases through the red deserts, now also with Beneos, fiendish vehicles for your role-playing campaign, complete with epic cinematic intro sequences that I'll show you at the end of the video, so come along, I'll show you what this new release has in store. In the last release we offered a sewer-themed city scenario. Now we are back on the blazing plains of hell. This is the homepage for Infernal campaigns. You know it already, it's old news. But under War Machine in the garage, where game masters can unlock the different vehicles that their players have acquired in their campaign, there's a new button that takes us to the Infernal War Machines. And that's the new release. Originally only the Hell Machine was here. Now the Demon Grinder, Scavenger, Tormentor and Devil's Ride are available. And that goes for all scenes now. Each of these scenes has a driving scene where the vehicle is part of the map. A camp scene for when the group sets up camp with that vehicle in their possession and can be attacked there or roleplay, of course. And its own intro sequence where we'll get to that in a moment. I've also added each of these vehicles as its own token. Under Infernal War Machines you can see the individual vehicles have been added. And if I go to this driving scene, we see an animated map and the individual vehicles as their own animated elements. The cool thing is that these vehicles are their own creatures. You can open them up and they have their individual features like the harpoon or the raking scythes on the Tormentor, which you can actually use in play. And because they're creatures, you can work with them on the battle map without any problems. They are built so you can of course play with them without any trouble. If I add Aerith here, our drow lady, for example, you can see she can move around on the token and actually take up different positions, the driver's seat, operating the wrecking ball, steering the vehicle or manning the harpoon. The cool thing is that if you want your group to position themselves here and, for example, fight on this vehicle, these are Beneos tokens by the way, which you know, then you can just move them around and have adventures. I'll show you. For example, you select the whole vehicle and the players and everyone moves together. Or they can jump across during their turn in initiative and board the other vehicle. And fight here in the middle of the ride while the other vehicles join the battle. This alone is already such a cool result if you ask me. When you imagine showing it on a TV on the table, you can really imagine how much fun it is. Just a race made up of these Infernal War Machines would be super exciting. And if, for example, you get run over, you can give a token a negative height, so it's under the vehicle or even under the map. But you can also make it fly. In general, the height feature is a big deal. You can use it, for example, to fly over obstacles. If, say, you're affected by something while in flight, that alone shows you what you can do. It's a pretty cool feature. You can run a race here and so on. What I thought was really cool, for example, is that I played Avernus myself at the weekend. Descent into Avernus, of course. Not with these Infernal War Machines here, but I was in the High Hall and revealed a pretty cool boss to my players. It was the Immolator, which I would like to plug here, because it worked extremely well for me. It's one of the many devils we have available, and this CR9 devil really packs a punch. When it's his turn, at the start of his turn, you can activate the Immolation Marks ability. Here you can cast Immolation Marks and make a range attack or a melee attack, and he can brand 3 targets, a mark that burns on them. Like a beholder, he picks 3 targets at the start of its turn, and they just get it. They don't even get a save, they're simply branded. And for each brand these stack on a creature, they take a d6 fire damage at the start of their turn. The Immolator himself has a lot of abilities that interact with a brand on a creature. For example, Immolation Mark lets him mark them, of course, and punish the marked allows him to deal them fire damage or make them more vulnerable to fire or consume the brand and so on. And when a creature has accumulated a certain number of marks, it explodes into a kind of fireball and burns everything around it. He also has many abilities that, for example, let him assign his own damage to other creatures, allied creatures, so that takes less damage himself, because he doesn't have very many hit points, but that's deceptive, since at the start of his round he gains temporary HP for every marked creature around. He therefore accumulates more the longer the fight goes on and the more different creatures are marked. And the players have to fight their way through the temporary HP anew each round. Why I mention this? Because it's a cool creature that fits perfectly into my hellish setting and harmonizes beautifully with all the other infernal creatures we have at Beneos Tokens. This week Leon is also a boarding party Imps, specifically designed like the war boys from Mad Max for these infernal machines, who do nothing but act as shock troops capturing other vehicles mid-ride and so on and so forth. I think this really shows how you can use all the assets we have here for the animated map, the vehicles, and also these Beneos tokens to improve your campaign. And that's not all. Let's go back to the main page and, for example, into the Demon Grinder. As I said, there's a separate driving scene for each vehicle. There, it's not the token but part of the map. These driving scenes are for situations when, for example, the group is attacked by hellish warlords. You can imagine them traveling to one of the quest locations, the Demon Zapper or another spot in hell, and being attacked by devils and other maniacs your players might face during their campaign. Then you can use this slightly higher quality map. If the Demon Grinder is your group's vehicle, for example, you can just say, hey, you're now being attacked by a Devil's Ride and a Tormentor, which here is loaded with various other creatures who pounce on your players, provided everything's properly marked, of course. And just like that, you've created a custom encounter. Your players can then act. They can drive away, for example, by accelerating. The Tormentor isn't as fast as the Demon Grinder, if I recall correctly, and you can let them outrun it, or have them actually fight vehicles against vehicle. That's exactly what these infernal scenes are for. Each of these driving scenes already has the other vehicles placed up here, so you can drag them in at a moment's notice. Down here we also have static versions of the individual vehicles, in case for performance reasons or because your group's computer can handle it, you need a lower resolution variant. But what's really cool is that over the course of a campaign, when your players have taken a vehicle for themselves, they'll most likely use it for the rest of the campaign or collect other vehicles. So at some point you inevitably have a camp, and there are corresponding maps for those camps where your group can be attacked at night. Like all maps, these have proper walls and of course lighting, and also sound source for wind and fire and so on. Here you can see the vehicle parked, and your group can simply operate here or have more role-playing moments with our sceneries. Each map also has its own scenery. A role-playing scene you can overlay when a battle map isn't needed, and each vehicle has its own one. To give example, we saw the Demon Grinder, but there's also a camp with the Scavenger. Let's take a look at that. We can also look at the other driving scenes. Here you go to the Tormentor, and it's also a part of the map. And each driving scene also has its own scenery. We can see it here, for example. The Tormentor in mid-ride with its own sound. For this release we've also added a separate background sound for each vehicle. Under Ambiences you can see we have the Demon Grinder, Devil's Ride, Scavenger and Tormentor listed, and I see I misspelled sewer, which I will fix in a moment, of course. And each of these vehicles has its own intro sequence, what is much more important. I'll show them to you now. The intro sequence is visible to all players as usual. You go to the scenes and just press the button. Now also in version 13. That means these buttons work again, since the last Foundry release Monk's active tile trigger had issues, but that's now fixed. And each sequence is so cool. Your players can enjoy the whole thing at their leisure. Just that, when they're attacked by this monster, it's such an immersive way to start the scene. Whether they come into the fight here, see this monster from afar, or view it from the perspective of a gunner on the Demon Grinder with the harpoon, which you can also see as an ability on the vehicle. Here you can see the driver working the various levers. And it's so immersive that from the vehicle's perspective you get a sense of how crude and brutal these hellish vehicles really are. And each of these vehicles, as I said, has its own intro. We can, for example, hop over to the Devil's Ride, the motorcycle. Also super cool. Perfect for a secret reconnaissance mission, scouting out the camps of the other warlords, for instance. I think it's cool. Say what you want. People can say what they like about hell settings, but if you have one and assets like these, it's fantastic. You can download everything right away via Moulinette, as usual. Which is why I'm not letting the videos run to the end. You can see yourself. Just access them through Moulinette. This, in fact, is still version 12 of Foundry VTT. It looks a bit different on your end. You have Moulinette Media Search, but the process is the same. You go to Beneos. In version 13, that's down here. The creator selection is down here. You then just go to Beneos and choose the appropriate pack. In this case, the Infernal War Machines. Then you simply click on it. Then this window opens. You choose Import Scenes. It asks you to import everything. You click yes. I'm not doing it now because I already have everything. And it installs exactly as you see it here. Let's take a look at the Scavenger. I won't withhold its intro sequence from you either. All of them are super special and have their own use. What characterizes the Scavenger is its crane, which can grab creatures or dismantle vehicles Mad Max style while driving, which I also think is very cool. Each of these vehicles has its own thing. When I designed and assembled this, it was important to me that it felt like something welded together from infernal iron. That's why everything rattles and clatters. When I moved the camera closer, I shot this in Unreal Engine, you can really see how each of the parts moves separately. It gives this cobbled together feel which is perfect for hellish scenarios. Exactly. Then we'll look at the Tormentor at the end. And then I'll leave you amazed. So the Tormentor 2. The Tormentor has claws at the front and a glowing grate at the front, which I can toggle on and off via variables in the Unreal Engine. And here it was important to me to show these spikes that hammer into the ground like mole claws, because it's so crude and thorny, like a totally unrealistic wheel, but in hell it makes sense. Relentlessly digging its way through the ground, dragging the weight of this behemoth behind it, and of course the blades. Again, a little POV shot here to show what it looks like when you are moving around on this Tormentor. Up front it also has this harpoon and of course the blades. It has a particularly nasty ability that can deal an enormous amount of damage. And like I said, you can show all of this to your players. If you are attacked by these vehicles, by a rival warlord for example, then you can play these intros, or if you are running a race or chasing someone down, you can do so many things with the intro sequences. I tried to create as many possibilities and freedom as possible, and in my opinion it works exceptionally well. As mentioned, we have the vehicles individually as token, so you can use your own maps and add the vehicles. And they have the appropriate abilities and the mobility features. For example, with the Devil's Ride, you can perform stunts and get bonuses, or try to dodge and get more bonuses on saving throws with that vehicle. So each of these vehicles is versatile and unique on its own right, what is always super important to me. I really hope you like what you're seeing. Next up will be something more generic. I'm off on vacation for a week now, and then we'll continue right here on Beneos Battlemaps. And if you want, you can also check our Beneos tokens, spells and items. There's also an Avernus release with the boarding imps this week. Leon will tell you more about it over there at Beneos Tokens. Starting on September 1st, spells and items and tokens will be the first service to run on our own Beneos Cloud infrastructure. We've been so successful that we now have our own cloud, which allows us to install item spells, these tokens you see right into your world with ease. And we've produced a cool video there that explains everything in detail. As you can see, everything goes hand in hand, and we are trying, this is our little mission, to make sure that in the end we offer anything a game master, including ourselves, could need to tell the most awesome stories we are capable of. I think we have always managed that so far, and will only get better at it in the future. If you have feedback, ideas or wishes, let me know, let us know, and if you like what you see, I can only ask you to support us on Patreon, so that we can pay the people who make these great things to make your stories as awesome as possible. I'm Ben, I hope you like what you see, and I wish you a cool summer, or as cool as it can be, a nice vacation, and of course an incredible amount of fun with your friends in the best hobby in the world. Take care, bye bye.